Well, welcome back to the Business Spotlight series. My name is Tanner O'Brien. I'm a senior partner here at Action Coach in Central Texas, and I am so excited to be joined here by Greg Bibeau, the founder and CEO of Terminal B, an IT solutions company here in the Austin area. And Greg, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us and have some conversation about business ownership, entrepreneurship, and really help us, learn a little bit more about your business specifically.
Well, Tanner, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Beautiful. Well, why don't we kick it off with just a little bit of information about you and your business? Tell us a little bit about your background and give us a little snapshot of about what Terminal B is.
Sure. So Terminal B is an IT service provider, also known as a managed services provider. We've been in business since 2004, which is quite a long time now that I say that out loud. And we pretty much either supplement or are the IT department for small to mid-sized businesses. So in many cases, firms don't want to put their eggs in one basket with a hire, so they'll engage an outsourced IT provider, which is what we do. In other cases, there may be individual hires in the organization, but they just don't have the breadth or the bandwidth to be able to do everything the organization needs, so they would bring our firm on. We do quite a bit of Microsoft 365 and Azure business. So for those that are hosting in Azure and or using 365 for productivity apps, we've been doing that since about 2010. So we're very well versed in that arena as well.
Very cool. So when you look at, or let me rephrase this, as a business owner that's maybe watching this and thinking through kind of those IT solutions, things like that, how would you describe kind of the best customer that works well with your business? If you were to say, this is who y'all love to work with the most, and kind of help me identify on if I was a really good fit for your business, how would that look?
So what we find, there's a quote that I always go back to as an owner. It's from Bill Parcells. He's a football coach, if you're not familiar. And he used to say, if you want me to cook the meal, you've got to let me do the shopping. And that's pretty much where the rubber hits the road on successful outsourced IT services. A lot of folks will engage outsourced IT services, but have a lot of opinion on how things should go. And they don't realize that the reason that managed services work so well is because the managed service provider is applying a lot of the best practices that they use with all of the businesses they work with to your business as well. And so there's a lot of efficiencies there. And so when owners try and parse out things that they may have opinion on and are not really aligned with the MSP, then it gets to be a more challenging situation. Now, obviously, there's room for discussions on what the best course of action would be. We don't look to be dictators in how we do our services, but we find the best is for firms that know they need outsourced IT is to let the outsourced IT provider do what they do best, right? And not pick and choose, on one or two things that they may have opinions on. It's really enabling the firm to do, again, what it is that they do best.
That's awesome. And I noticed in kind of preparing for our conversation today that y'all are one of the largest Microsoft partners in Texas and are actually a gold partner with Microsoft.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we are a gold, although they're changing the certifications as they do quite often, we are currently a gold partner with Microsoft. But more importantly, we're a direct CSP partner. And what that means is there's really no daylight between us and Microsoft. When firms buy 365 from us, they're buying through us, but when we buy it is from Microsoft. Whereas smaller MSPs or newer MSPs are having to buy through distribution. So there's an extra layer in there. And it actually creates challenges when it comes time for support, because while the products work very well, there's always the need for support. Things always arise, and it helps not having additional layers between you and the ultimate software producer. So we find that it works out quite well for our clients.
Very cool. So I'd love to peel back some of the layers on kind of what got you into this business and officially, starting Terminal B back in 2004. But was this always kind of what your path looked like, growing up, or kind of how did this journey get kicked off for you?
It's actually funny. My career began in music, in the arts. Growing up, I wanted to be a music supervisor and arrange for music to be in movies, motion pictures, and stuff like that. But that's not the path that I ended up on. I was in arts and entertainment. I was the general manager of the Austin Theater Alliance, which is the Paramount and State Theaters downtown here in Austin. And way back when, must have been 2001 or two, it was the rise of computers and even the arts. Ticketing was a huge thing, where ticketing
Mm.
had to be done on computers, but databasing was also becoming big. And the theaters were just starting to use computers enough where we required additional assistance. There was no one on staff that actually had that experience. And so we brought in a firm at the time that did exactly what I do now, which is a managed service provider, and they help keep our technology running. It turns out that after I left the theater, I got my MBA, and ended up going to business with that first technician that was assigned to the theater. And that's when we launched Terminal B. Shortly thereafter, we realized there was definitely a market for those services, and ran with it from then.
Oh, that's fun. I just love hearing the stories of how anyone gets into just kind of the concept of entrepreneurship or getting into business for themselves. It's almost never a linear path.
Yeah,
It's very rare to find the person that's like, nope, this is what always was going to do, and got into it. So that's awesome. From
yeah.
music to IT management, things like that. Um, so I'm curious, being in business as long as you have, I would imagine that there's been some ups and some downs, some roadblocks or challenges that you've had to overcome along the way. What are some of the biggest, most memorable obstacles or hurdles that you've had to overcome that were really meaningful or defining in your journey of growing your business?
Well, one is the concept of difficult discussions. There's one client that we work with, one of our oldest clients, that actually is responsible for a certain technology standard, and we had to have a discussion with them that their interpretation of the technology was not exactly accurate in the actual practical use of the technology. And so the importance of being able to have difficult discussions is definitely prevalent, and has been an important part of what I've done over the last 18 years. It's necessary because things don't always go the way that you'd like them to, and in service, they don't always go the way that clients would prefer they go. And so you have to be able to have those discussions, and they don't always go very well. But they're necessary. And so there's an art and a science, I guess, to having those discussions. So that's one of the things. The other kind of lesson, if you will, over the years has been, as a small business owner, I think we gravitate towards doing as much as we can, and not really empowering the people that we hire to work for us. And that's been one of the biggest lessons I've learned, especially as of late, is that I was actually getting in the way of my business succeeding. That, I had the right people around me, but I wasn't empowering them to do what they were capable of. And as soon as I realized that, backed off, people that work for me began to flourish. And it's not because they weren't capable of it before, it was my perception of what my role was in the organization. And again, a lot of business owners, it's their baby, right? And they don't want to let things out of the grasps of their fingers. And really, that's a surefire way to stay a small business, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But most people don't get into business to say they're going to be a small business. They get into business and their aspiration is to grow. And if that's the plan, then they have to act like a more mature firm.
That's so powerful. I don't know that I've yet found the business owner that, tells me that they got into business to work, 50, 60, 80 hours a week, and that's all they ever wanted to do until they die. So that is a really critical thing there. So I'm curious, as you started to recognize, the need to kind of back off and empower others, was there anything that kind of led to having that realization? If I haven't realized that in my own business, how is there any advice that you would give to business owners that may be in that early stages where they haven't quite recognized that yet?
Yes, at such point as you realize that you should have done that, I don't want to say it's too late, but it's already taken a toll on you. So I like to say I had the proverbial breakdown. It wasn't a breakdown per se, but I just had a moment of clarity where, my firm was doing things the same way and had been doing the same way, and we were having the same results, and the results are not what we wanted. And so it was a major frustration on my part where I kind of pumped the brakes and said, this is not going, we've been at this too long. Why is it not going the way that it should? And really, it took some reflection, but it was me. It was me being involved in too many things. And that's been a huge boon for us as an organization, just that realization. So
Beautiful. So as you reflect back on kind of this journey over the last several years in ownership of a business, kind of building through entrepreneurship, is there anything that you had expectations of that were completely different than what reality actually was?
expectations versus reality. Well, I think sales has always been a challenge. I thought sales, you just do the salesy kinds of things and the marketing kinds of things, and people would just line up at your door. That's definitely not how things have played out. There's a lot more that goes into it than I would have thought. The reality there is pretty stark. I don't know though if there's anything else that immediately comes to mind. I think that would be the big one.
Excellent. That's really good insight. I want to be respectful of the time that we have here today. So we've talked a bit about kind of the journey into business ownership, some things that have been learned along the way. But I want to look to the future for a moment. What's exciting to you in your industry specifically, and where your business is headed? Kind of what gets you up in the morning and just gets you fired up for continuing to be a part of and growing the business that is Terminal B?
Yeah. So one of the things kind of ties back to one of my earlier points is that now I have people that I am working with in growing their skill sets, and it's amazing to see what they're capable of, the directions they're able to take the business. It allows me to see more kind of above the tree line as well, to say what are opportunities that we wouldn't be able to consider when I was burdened by all other aspects of the business, right? So I like our growth prospects. I like the ability now that I'm not burdened with more of the tasks that I have employees that can take care of. It's great to see them grow, and it's great to see the business consider opportunities that we wouldn't have had, wouldn't have been able to even consider, just a few short years ago.
Oh, that's very cool. And if I could ask, how many team members are you up to currently?
17. So there's
17.
17. Yep.
That is fantastic. So I'm going to ask a question kind of off script on the pre-planned questions that I had sent over to you. But being in business that has grown and hired several team members, what's one or two characteristics you look for when hiring great team members for your team specifically?
Well, one of the things, this is one of my mentors and good friends had said this, and now it's incorporated into our interview process. But we very much want to know what someone geeks out about. Doesn't have to be anything specific, but there has to be a passion of theirs that they bring with them that demonstrates that they're capable of being passionate about things, right? And having the commitment or having the interest that something moves them, right? And we've incorporated that in our interview process, and I think that it's worked quite well, because those are the people that tend to understand and proceed through opportunities like you would expect, rather than people that just don't have any interests or passions and not the people we were looking for. But it's been very helpful for us.
That's awesome. I absolutely love that question. Oh man, that's
So I mean,
Taking note
you
on
can
that one.
imagine,
That is
and
awesome.
you can imagine IT. It varies. I guess it doesn't vary as much as you would think because it can be, from anime to sports to, whatever it may be. But as long as there's something that tells us that there's a person in there that has interest and those are the kinds of people that we're looking for.
Beautiful. I love that. So before we kind of wrap up, I'd like to end on one quick question. But before we get there, when we look at if you were to go back and give your 18-year-old self advice on kind of this journey, this path that you are on today, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Not to wait. I don't think there's going to be a better time to do the things that you're interested in doing or you have designs on doing. There's always going to be things that get in the way, and it's much like you hear with families and when it's the appropriate time to have kids, right? It's never the appropriate time to have kids. You just have to, if you're going to do it, you're just going to do it. Same thing is true with business. If there's opportunity out there and you keep pushing it down the road, that opportunity may not be there or it might change. And you should take advantage of what you can when you can. I think that's pretty important.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Greg, I appreciate you taking the time today. So if any of our listeners want to get in contact with you or learn more about Terminal B, what's the best way to find out more information? How can they get in contact and continue to learn more?
So reaching out to us via our website. We can also you can call our main number, which is listed on our website. We're happy to have discussions with folks on where they're at, even if it's just taking the temperature of how IT is in their organization. We do complimentary 365 tenant reviews to make sure that the right mix of SKUs are in place and the right mix and match, if you will, of and no more is being utilized by firms. And generally, we're open to discussions on what plans might be, especially around Azure virtual desktops and managed services, security, the whole nine yards. So we talk with a lot of folks, and they may not be ready to engage at the time when they speak to us, but we put them on a path to learning more information about what might be important to their firm.
Excellent. It's fantastic. For everyone that is listening, I encourage them to go out and connect with y'all, have those conversations, and really learn more about how y'all can work together. And the conversations are really important for their businesses. So, Greg, I'd love to end on one question that I love to kind of wrap up every interview on, and that question is this: what is most inspiring to you today?
What is most inspiring? I keep going back to this fact, but now just based on where we are as a firm, I've got a core of people that are thriving, and it's amazing for me. Typically a small business owner, it's all about the small business owner, but I've got a team of folks that are really flourishing in ways that I'm not sure they thought was possible, and so that's exciting for me to be able to grow a business and do it with folks that have kind of been on the same journey and are now doing things that they didn't think they were able to do previously. It's pretty compelling, and that's inspiring.
Beautiful. Well, Greg, thank you so much for everyone here. Greg Bibeau with Terminal B. Check them out. Follow the contact information that we'll put in the description of the video here, but reach out to him. Greg, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a true pleasure to get to know you and your business a bit better and your journey through kind of business ownership. So thank you. Of
Awesome. Thanks, Tanner. I appreciate it.
course.